Hello, welcome to Mountain Craft Studio. My name's Christine. Come on in and I'll show you what I've been working on. Okay, well, make yourself comfortable. I thought today I would take you on a tour of my vintage samplers. I have been suffering with back injury for a while, so I haven't actually been able to accomplish a whole lot as far as projects go. I've been mainly focusing on my forget-me-not sampler and choosing colors for my one of my Scandinavian samplers that I am going to reproduce. I actually am starting with the Lawton sampler, which I'll post a photo of here. I did go ahead and go to Always in Stitches in Noblesville, which is one of my local needlework shops, and I picked out some threads a couple of weeks ago. And I also chose some linen, and I chose the Quilt Cafe Mocha 28 count. And I think that's going to be a perfect perfect match for what I need. The front colors, I thought I would do both the front and the back. Choose colors for both the front and the back. The front colors are rather dull because the colors really faded on this one. I chose both Fancy Floss and some of the DMC for both the front and the back. The back has some really fun ones. And you can really notice in the pictures that I'm showing that it's amazing the difference. I posted on Instagram that it really reminds me of a remember Joe Dirt when he party in the front, or business in the front and party in the back with the mullet. Definitely makes me think of that. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm actually going to I'm finally, after 4 years of suffering with this back problem, I'm finally allowed to go have surgery in July. Cannot wait. It's gonna be so exciting. So I'm looking forward. I'm trying to get things ready for that recovery period, because I'm just gonna be able to not lift anything, which I haven't been able to lift anything for a long time anyway because of the injury. So, but I'm looking forward to lining projects up to work on during that time. I've also been working on the, like I said, the Forget-Me-Not sampler. Last time I talked to you, I had the top of the box finished and ready to go. I've since worked on most of the back. I just have to put the letters on. And I have a good portion of the side finished. Still need to wrap around that. And there's a little story behind that project. The box, nothing's ever simple with me. The box was sitting on the work stand that I have here in my studio. If you saw the studio tour, I have a setup where I do all my finishing, and it was sitting on that waiting to be finished. And just above that workstation is my mini split for the air conditioning for this room. And when things got really hot, things got really hot here in Indiana, the condensation built up so much in the mini split that it just poured out water all over the workstation. and all over the box and the papers and everything that was laying there on the workstation and the workstation itself. And yeah, it warped the box and came unglued and everything else, and I was not pleased, but I was proud of myself. I didn't, you know, lose my cool. I just moved on, ordered another box, and the box will be able to, the first box will be able to save. I'll have my husband put it back together and I'll use it for another project, and it's no big deal. It's not like I'm never going to make another box. So we're just going to keep on moving on. I'm going to get this box done no matter what. Nothing's going to stop me. Anyway, so that I did take a little bit of a break from this in order to work on another project that I had worked on last year and then stuck, kind of tucked away because I want to say it was Black Sampler November came up and I started on something else. But this is the A Changed World by the Scarlet House. Beautiful project that I love. I love the sentiment on it, and I love that it reminds me of these vintage samplers. It looks like one of those the motif samplers to me. It gives me that look. I believe this is baked clay. Is it baked clay? Yes, baked clay from Fox and Rabbit that I'm stitching this on, and I'm using I'm using the 103 silks, and I am only using a single strand, and the pattern called for 36 count, but I could only get 32 count at the time, and I went ahead and just used the single strand on it, and I'm okay with the way it looks because it actually to me it makes it look even more like one of the vintage samplers that you see behind me. I like that spare look. I think it gives it a little more I don't know, a naive look to it or whatever, but I like the way that looks. So before I've started working on it, since this last video, I didn't have any of this section done. I'd only done the top section and some of the borders going down, but so I started in on this. I'm going to try to get over to the edge here before I set it down and start working on something else again. But this has been a really enjoyable stitch. I've decided I'm not going to do the black middle section. I'm going to take that out and the things behind it or beside it and just move this up a little bit and finish it off. I don't really need that black section, but then I think it will, I really like that. I think it'll be cute. Looking forward to having that one finished. And then before I get started on showing you the vintage samplers, I wanted to talk about the stamped samplers a little bit. I think they get a bad rap, and I don't know why. I think partly it's because they were stamped, and I think people think that the stamped versus counted cross stitch somehow it's inferior, and I think people think that, oh well, they didn't, you know, because it's counted cross stitch, that's somehow, I don't know, more creative, or that when you look at the girlhood samplers or something like that, that they, you know, they did all that themselves and they, you know, it was original art. No, actually it wasn't. And actually there's a example, and this is Rebecca Scott's book on samplers. And if you look on page 15, she actually has a picture of a sampler that someone, a professional artist, had started drawing, right? And then the embroiderer then started filling in. This is how the majority of those fancier samplers were made. The girls didn't sit down and draw these. They stitched them, but someone else drew those in. So it's really no different than the stamped versions of cross stitch, you know, that were done in the 1930s. To me, I don't see how there's that much of a difference. It's the same concept, and it was the same thing from, you know, the 1500s until now, and possibly even earlier, because we don't have those records anymore. That's all, you know, it's all just disintegrated. So I think that it's an art form that should be appreciated just as much as any other. Maybe it's looked down on too because the mottos seemed, you know, I don't know. I don't know why they seem, I think they're charming. I think some of them are you know, but I think it reminds me of Grandma's house, and, you know, all things good come from Grandma's house. Cookies, you know, what's not to love? So without further ado, I'm going to take you down and I'm going to walk you around and show you my tour of my vintage samplers, but I just ask that you ignore the mess that is the rest of the studio. So don't look anywhere else, just focus on the samplers. Okay, so this is, I think this might have been the first one I ever purchased. Let me live in the house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. When I'm looking for vintage samplers, for me, like I said, I find them charming, and it's the charm factor that I look for. The majority of the ones that I like are the ones that are from the 1930s. I like it when they have the original frame. This one's really super original. It needs to be redone. This is, it's probably just done on a piece of plywood, or not even plywood, but cardboard. But I like the colors on it a lot. So I'm just going to take this one down, set it. There's a lot of those. You'll see that particular, you'll see that one frequently. It may have been one of those that was, a lot of these were advertised in magazines. I think that the ones with the houses were advertised, were popular. You see those a lot. This one, that house may be wee, but the welcome is big. I really like this one too. Any of them with a house. It's funny, we still like those with the older samplers too, don't we? We love the houses. I don't know why that is, but we do. This one, I do try to look, whenever I look for samplers, I try to look for the ones that are stitched really well. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I like them. This one's not stitched particularly well, but it's cute. I like the colors. Again, it's not particularly done well. It is at least somewhat laced, but look, someone's grandma did it. So I think it's cute. You gotta love it if someone's grandma did it. So this one, let's see if I'll step back a little bit. You don't see this particular one as often, or at least I haven't. I'm not saying that it's rare. I just haven't seen this particular layout. I've seen this phrase, but not particularly this layout. Again, it's got the tiny old-fashioned frame. Pretty sure this one's original. Super lightweight. It had old glass in it originally, but it didn't survive one of our moves. I do intend to put some glass back in it at some point and frame those that are not framed properly. I plan to get them framed properly at some point so that they will last a little bit longer. This one is a more recent acquisition. This is actually professionally framed and really well, and it looks like it was never exposed to any, you know, cigarette smoke or anything like that, because it's in really good condition. It's very pretty. I like the colors. The framing, you can tell, was professionally finished. And I think more recently, I think it was, there's a little bit of staining, but not much. And this one is dated. And that one was too. They're not always, but sometimes. So that was 1936. This one's 1933. This is one of my favorites. This is, I think this one, a lot of them were, the whole thing was printed as a complete thing. I think this one was actually, they also had things where you could iron them on and create whatever you wanted to, and I think these were the iron-ons. So these were just randomly ironed, you know, in place, so that's how they did these letters at the bottom. If that makes any sense. I probably could have said that better. My words aren't really flowing well today, sorry. But I think this is adorable. I think it was, you know, how cute would that have been in a little, a baby's room or a little boy's room or a little girl's. I think it's adorable. 1930, obviously. This one, I think, this one goes in my guest room, and I think it's really, really pretty. I'm not usually a purple person, but I really like the purple on this. I think it's beautiful. The silhouettes are really a popular thing. You see a lot of the silhouettes from the 1930s. This next one is one of my favorites as well, partly because I am a spinner, and partly because I just love that border. Let's see if I can get that a little bit more. It's very pretty colors. Mother dreams as she sits and spins, and with each thread, love's confidence wins. This goes in my spinning room. I love it. So those are pretty much the 1930s, 40s era. They were also popular. They kind of died down then during the 50s, and then they came back. There was a resurgence again in the 60s, and I think the ones back here are the ones that started again in the 60s. So again, they started with there's some of them that they were sold through magazines and such, and I think that's what these are. This is Home is Where the Heart Is, with the little Scotty dog, which is kind of cute. Obviously, it needs to be stretched again in its frame. This one is definitely, this one actually says Good Housekeeping on the back. I believe, yeah, there it is. This one is unfortunately glued to this board. I wish they wouldn't have done that. This one is another unfortunate mishap. I love the colors on this. It's funny, I don't know why oh, that's me. That's the reflection. I was like, I don't know why that's showing up with those white spots on it. But someone, in order to fit it into this frame, this cheap, newer frame, they sliced the bottom and the top off. Just stuck it in there. It's not wrapped around. They could have just wrapped it around, but they didn't. They actually cut it, which is sad because it's really pretty. And then there's this one at the bottom that, again, I think is that same 60s time period. There was also a quilt top that you could make to match this. That was I want to say full or queen size, I can't recall, but you could get the quilt top, and it was actually really pretty, I think. And I've actually seen them recently. You could still get them on eBay if you had the desire. And then of course there was, this is the one that this is the chase sampler that my mother had made, and it was the late 60s, early 70s when she made this one. And it's gorgeous. And it just shows you that stamped sampler can be amazing. And then finally, there's this little one. I think this is probably modern. And I had to have this one because what grandma doesn't need to have this above their little guest room for their little grandkids. And I don't know if you know where this is. It was done by Heidi's Arts and Crafts. I thought that was cute. But this goes above my little grandson's bed. Super cute. So looking at some of those has inspired me to finish some things. If you've watched some of my older episodes, actually I think it was my very first episode, you might remember my world's oldest whip was this one. So this is, I started this as a child. It's my 42-year-old work in progress. And I've decided I am gonna finish this, and I'm going to frame it because I'm gonna put it up with all of the rest of my vintage samplers, and because it's worthy of being finished at this point, I think, and because I don't want to be known as the world's biggest slacker. Anyway, and I have some others that I have purchased. So you might remember in one of the other episodes, some other things I mentioned. I had picked these up. I think these were during the 60s to 70s resurgence that these were made. I picked these up at a antique mall, I think. I think I will work with one of these myself, and then I'm hoping to get either my daughter or my granddaughter, or maybe both, to work on these as well. I think those would be good projects for that. Someday, I have the Old McDonald's Farm Lap Quilt Top project. These are from Hirschner's. They still sell these. These are the little squares that you can then assemble into their little farm animals. They're adorable. That you can then assemble into a quilt top. I definitely want to get this finished at some point for potentially a future grandchild. Who knows? Or just do it for me because they're cute little, who doesn't want cute little farm animals on a farm, right? Super cute. And I'd showed this one before. This was in, I don't remember which episode, but this is the Mary Batchelder. I'm gonna take it out of the bag. The Mary Batchelder cross stitch. This was the one with the her ancestor was the, oh, I'll think of it in a second. The Scarlet Letter. Remember? What's Hester Prynne? That's it. Anyway, one of my episodes told that story about how my ancestor was married to Hester Prynne. Anywho, so then also in my planning, this one actually is going to be done fairly soon. I have a spot for this one, so it's not open. Oops. So I have, if you watched the video of my cabin tour, in the kitchen there is a give us this day our daily bread cross stitch, and it's in this same style, but it's just in harvesty colors and that sort of thing, and it's in a neat old style frame. Well, I have another one of those frames, and I want to do this one. I have this kit. I want to do this one for this house here at the farm, and I want to. We have a mud room, it's a farmhouse, right? You have a big old mud room, and I want to get this finished and have that out in that mud room, so it looks like it would be a pretty quick stitch. They're pretty big stitches. I think the floss would be okay. If not, I certainly have enough to fill in with something else. But I really want to get this one done soon, partly because we do have, we've got the picket fence and the whole bit, so I might actually even change the colors on the house to make it look like this house, so I don't know, but I like it. I want to get this done. And then here's what's really going to make you think I'm a nutball. And I'll take that label willingly. It's okay. I'm cool with that. So, if you watched my studio tour, you know that I have right behind you now, there's double doors that have French doors, and there's a ton of light that comes in those doors, and in order to be able to create these videos, I have to cover those doors up. And I have a quilt that I hang up there, which is fine and it works, but I'd like to be able to have some. I don't want that quilt to stay in the sun all the time. Obviously it would get damaged. So I wanted to create something like curtains on each side that I don't have to move over there all the time, right? So when I saw my friend Amy post this for sale, I said, that's exactly what I want. And hang on with me here, you'll understand. So this is one of those quilts, similar to the one that I told you that was the same as the sampler back there. This is a stamped cross-stitch quilt that you can make. It had already been partially finished. It's actually, there's one half of it is almost complete already, and it was very well stitched, and it comes in 2 large panels, and then the borders are separate. And my thinking is that I can use the panels as curtain panels, right? And make these into, I'd still line them and still make them into quilts, right? But they would be quilted panels on each side. Are you following me? Because it has to be quilted in order to keep the sunlight out. But that's my plan. And yes, I'm crazy. And no, it won't happen tomorrow. But I might get a good start on it while I'm sitting on my bum recovering. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But everything was there. All of the, right? It's a ton. I love these. These are my colors. These are absolutely 100% my favorite colors. This is my favorite color combination of all time. And it was halfway completed, right? I've got a long arm. I can stitch them. Why not? It was cheap. So, cheaper than buying curtains. So, that's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. And now I've announced it to the world, so I have peer pressure to get it done. So, somebody needs to keep asking me, did you get those curtains done yet? So that I will actually finish that. That's probably the best thing about these Flosstube videos, is that you kind of feel guilty if you don't do things. With Instagram, you can kind of, nobody will remember that, but when you're on, when it's a video, you kind of feel like you have to. Anyway, moving on. Thrifting. So I've been doing a little shopping. Doing a lot of shopping, actually, but I've been, I went out, we have a little thrift store that has opened up near us, which it's called Sanford and Daughter, which I thought was hilarious. Do you remember that? Sanford and Sons? I love that show. That's totally, I could live like that. If only I was allowed. I'm definitely prone to hoarding. I think I mentioned that before. It could come easily to me. Luckily I don't. So, I know that I showed this on Instagram. Vonna had showed on one of her floss tubes that she had gone out and bought, or her husband had bought for her, so her Holly Hobby dolls back that she had when she was a little girl. And I just, then I had shown that I still had mine from when I was little. These were, my mom had saved these along with a bunch of other things, you know, from my childhood. And I remember, I love these because I still have my little dress like this that I dressed up, you know, in and all that sort of stuff. But I love these. So when I went to the thrift store the other day and I saw these, I had to have them. So these were the little Holly Hobby lunch boxes. My husband thought I was crazy. I don't know what his problem is, but I knew exactly what I would do with it. Look, it still has the little thermos. So the insides are a little rough still, right? It's got some rust in it. They're not perfect. The back has another little image, but it is just super cute, right? I'm picturing coating or putting it, finishing, thank you, words, Christine, finishing off with fabric, right? And making a cute little sewing box out of this, right? How cute would that be? Super cute. And this one has knitting, they're knitting on it already. They're winding a yarn ball, right? With the little cat on the bottom. This one, I think they're baking cookies on the back. But, so obviously this one needs to be a knitting box of some sort. This one had a thermos, but it's not the right one for this box. It's for a different, it's a Holly Hobby thermos, but it's a different, needs to go with a different box. But I thought this one was cute. It actually, some little girl named Holly actually had it, and it had her phone number. But this one as well will become some sort of little knitting box. I did consider too making this one into a, I've seen those, have you seen those on Instagram, the little doll houses, out suitcases? They make, it comes like this, and then it has like a divider here, and then each of these are like little rooms, right, or whatever, and then you can have your doll in there. And then I thought, well, you can make it even just a doll house for this, but it's not necessarily the right size, so I don't know. What do you think? What would you do with them if you had them? Lots of possibilities, lots of fun things that can be done. Obviously, you could just set them around for display as well. But I think they're too cute for that. And since they are not in perfect condition, it wouldn't bother me to actually use them for something. I definitely want to try to find, I had fabric similar to that at one point. I definitely remember that. I don't think I still have it, but I could definitely see putting something like that, lining the fabric in there like that. But anyway, what would you do with them if you had them? And, well, the other question is, did you have Holly Hobby when you were little? A lot of people that I've talked to did, and they also had the lunchbox, or the dolls. So did you have one? I think they're super cute. And then before I leave you for the day, I wanted to show my vintage collectible of the day. I'm not out of sewing boxes yet, but I'm getting close. But this one today, I thought since we're talking vintage and the vintage theme, I wanted to start with my baskets. So, and this is one of my favorites. I love this fabric. Love this fabric. This is like the best fabric on the planet. Look how pretty that is. So I generally display, I just use this one for display, and I have some vintage things that I display in it. I took most of them out, but I have like a little tape measure, some other vintage tools and things that I usually display in it, and I leave this open just because I want to see this beautiful fabric all the time. This still has the little flowers on the top, but how pretty is that? So primarily decorate in a primitive style at the log cabin, but here at the farmhouse I do try to go with more of a vintage vibe. I love the happier colors and lighter vibe that you get with the vintage look, and I have some pieces from my family that work with that feel. This quilt I actually have, it belonged to my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. It wasn't made by my grandmother. I'm not sure where he bought it, but it was after she had passed away, where he acquired it. But it is one of my very favorites. Oh, I love it. It's an interesting pattern. It's a little bit unusual. The shape is a little bit unusual. It's not your common Dresden plate look. But it's happy, that's for sure. It's definitely a happy quilt. And I'm gonna leave you today with that and hope that you have a happy day. See ya.